Hello, one and all. I'm here today to discuss with you about where the fun is in these mutant games. And I know that this is kind of perhaps an opinion piece, and as such, your mileage may vary or vastly differ, but this is my experience of it. So, as I see it, and this is based on my personal experience of having played Mutant Genlab Alpha and being uh, a good way through uh, an accelerated campaign. I'm running it as an you don't keep doing all the travel of all of it and as many sessions as you would to get right to the end of everything, simply because they'd get to a point where you, because of the random encounter lists and all of that, that you'd have to start repeating yourself, and you are in like a limited map setting. So unlike say something like Year Zero, you where you can go off and explore that new thing, and you know where the new bit is, and you know it's going to reveal something new, a hex crawl. This is just basically you've changed scenery type, and maybe it's time to chuck another random encounter in there and stuff like that. And there's going to be limits and stuff eventually for that. And where you want to try and keep it really enclosed, you can't do too much that you would normally do in maybe Mutant as well out there. So you can't break up what it is they're experiencing so much. Lots of limits, and limits are good. Don't get me wrong, because limits in games. I had this debate with a player once who didn't like the limits in a Warhammer 40k based system called Dark Heresy. And for those of you that don't understand what Warhammer 40k is, let me just briefly put it to you that it's grimdark, basically. So high technology that's been long forgotten and now misunderstood, and instead of the technology working because of an AI or because of the coding, it's some sort of machine spirit that's making it work. So it's sort of like superstitious but high tech with it, and it's really, really grim and dark. And it's within that setting there where it's very, very limiting on the kind of life you can live and the kind of acolyte you can be to the Inquisition for to be an Inquisitor. But you see, it's those limits there that actually then free you, because you can then do things with those narrowed classes and really tell a story with it, because it's done a lot of the work for you. But because there's thousands or millions or billions of worlds or whatever, you can get expanded with it as well, because it's a whole galaxy wide kind of deal. So yeah, anyway, there's limits here, but if you were to play this for too long, you'd start seeing the same kind of encounters, and it would just have like different numbers in it. This is a slightly stronger version of this thing. Okay, now you've met a slightly weaker one, because you roll for whatever strength or magnitude factor of the random encounter. So you might say, oh yeah, here's a land shark, but however many sixes you rolled to actually generate the land shark being there, that's how many plus whatever on its strength. So I've had to add a few things as well to make it a little bit more interesting. Maybe it's something I could provide at some point as a file and make available on Free League, because Free League Publishing are a pretty cool company as companies go, and they're actually promoting player-made content in that kind of OGL type way, where you can like put it on drive-through or whatever, and they'll put it up on their site and say, hey, a player's done this, because they know they can't support everything. They know the limits of their company, and they can say, we can do this. Unlike say someone like Green Ronin, who, well, my issues that I've had there. Yeah, so I didn't want them to repeat too much. I didn't want them to get to a point where they'd get bored. So I don't want to give them the chance to. I want to get out of the campaign, and I want to get it to a point where they're left wanting more. But what is it that you would want more of? What is the actual content? Because it's a funny thing, because the layout of Genlab Alpha in of itself, it's pretty loose. It's all travel based, and you essentially just generate stuff based on travel and the chance for random encounters, and that's it. And there aren't the kind of modules that you can stick in maybe with some extra expansion and support, like with Mutant has a few little zone bits already made for you, the compendium bits, those files. So yeah, the GM has to do all of that. And I think it's like you've got the plot, the key points, which are basically the plot points, and these games tend to have 5 of them, and the speed at which you experience them is the speed you complete the campaign in. Yeah, so you could maybe kick the campaign off with the first one if you want, and you'd end the campaign with the 5th one, and that 5th one is definitive, and it does end the campaign. So that's how they work. So the speed at which you introduce them is the speed of the campaign. So I can control that somewhat. And as soon as I think they're ready, because I've given them accelerated experience, accelerated this, that, the other, I can chuck them at the next one. And yeah, so the idea is not so much the big events. And when the big events happen, that's something to really latch onto and, you know, experience. It's pre-written, the area's pre-written out, and you can really get your teeth into that as a GM and give them something different. But the rest of it is this going around and exploring. And it's one of these funny kind of systems where it's the little things. It's within that exploration. It's the small things that matter. So they might be going along and they might see some relic from the past or something, and meet a certain animal that has a certain point of view. And you know, that's a big thing, and they find a particular artifact and the way it works in context to where they find it and such. The little things, trying to, you know, meet a swarm for the first time and work out how a swarm works and try to understand it, but then figure out all its other stuff, or the unusual way it may actually interact with you somehow, and have unexpected effects on people, especially if they've got crossover mutant powers. If they're tainted animal mutants, so they've got a few access to them, you can get some weird combinations of things happening. So like the little things, you know, you could and I explained like the everything exploding video that can happen. That was a big thing, but it was, you know, it wasn't written as such, because it had to be created new as a new type of challenge for the players. So we experienced some little things when they finally got to go inside Genlab Alpha. Spoilers ahead here for the insides of Genlab Alpha. Okay, and I think this encapsulates perfectly what I'm talking about. They were inside, and you know, they've been desperately trying to survive and just on nothing. You know, we're making bows, we're trying to buy and create arrows and trade for things. Food and water's scarce, and we've got carrying limits, and it's all like we're just trying to get by and just about surviving, and the party hasn't really got proper hunter support to help hunt gather food and water supplies for them, rations. So there's that. They finally get to a place in here where they find a vending machine. Now, I don't just come right out and call it a vending machine. I describe it literally by its shapes, colours, and all of that, and then they can meta work it out that it's a vending machine. And it's like a can of Coke or whatever that's in the bottom. So they put their hand in the flap and they pull it out, and it's just the sheer joy of in the apocalypse after all these years. And my God, we've found a can of Coke, yeah. And this can of Coke and this box of cigarettes, which have a mechanical effect, by the way, in the artifacts list. A coffee machine that they found, packets of coffee, all have a stat effect, yeah. As limited use items, obviously. Those things, those are epic finds. For the players, they're getting really excited. Oh my God, we found a vending machine and it's got 1 can of Coke in it. Guys, oh my God, we've got a can of Coke. My God, we've got a carton of cigarettes. Look how many cigarettes are in this. That's amazing. So it's really changed the level, and they're excited and worked up about those finds. And that's how I know that we are doing the apocalypse correctly. We haven't overloaded them with goodies, so that when they find the simple things have some mechanical effect in some way, and they mean something. So, like, they found a teddy bear, and it was a great find, because what it does is when you lose points of instinct, which is kind of your willpower stat kind of thing for an animal mutant, you can cuddle this teddy bear and get your instinct back that way without having to go off and do animal behavior to get it back, your animal side. So it's those little finds, and it's those little storytelling moments, these little, we met such and such, and it had this effect on us, and the conversation went that way, and we told him to do this, and he went off and did it, and we don't know if we'll hear from him again, and we found this, experienced it in that way, you know, we came to the river, and this happened. It's little things, you know, we came to the river and we fished, and the fish looked like this, and the stones were slippery trying to cross it, and it was quite a rapid. But we know not to get caught in it because there's a waterfall at the southern end. And that kind of experiencing the travel, we went through the forest and the trees looked like this. And the weather went like this. And the weather effect then was like this. And it was rain, and then it went into a particular kind of deadly storm that started like electrifying all of our equipment. And it started doing all this. So the storytelling is really centered in the journey. Now, isn't that great? Because so many other RPGs struggle with the travel. And one way that, you know, there's lots of ways, actually, that GMs try to get around that travel problem. I call it a travel problem because so many places, you know, they make these maps and they give you the, you know, the main location. You can go off and sort of try to get from here to here, and a lot of people, you know, just want to kind of fast forward time, and well, that happened, we traveled from here to here. Now, having played Curse of Strahd, that gives you a very definitive map, and like the locations are all very defined as interspatially, for me the setting is so evocative that to have not experienced the travel would have been a huge shame and a blunder. So I had all the travel in Strahd really experienced, and I tried to, you know, break something down so that these little sections on the map, you'd look at that bit of the map once you finally have a map of the place, because that's the other thing, you know, delaying actually owning a map of the place, and then you give them a map and it's like, yeah, that's where we were. And that's little moments like that. It's those things where you could say, oh, that was the point that we met the such and such, and you know, all the mists come in, and when the mists wouldn't leave us alone, and it was funneling us, and these things came out of it, remember them, and it was all, it's the little things on the journey, even if they didn't attack you, it's the way they looked, it's the way the setting made you feel, the narrative descriptions of the place, and that is where the gold is. It's tiny little things, and then you experience a campaign full of sessions of lots of those little things, and they don't seem like much. Hey, you know, today we went into a such and such, and you know, we found a can of Coke, we found some painkillers, and we found an old photo album. It was like, wow, did you? Wow, you know, the photo albums are plus 2 comprehend roles, because you can, you know, understand the old world more. You get like an insight into the old world more and stuff like that. And we found a book, you know, and it would be the sort of stuff that other games would just would laugh at. D&D would laugh at that. D&D would say, you know, it's not even an uncommon item. What are you talking about? What are you doing? And whereas in the setting like this, I love it because it's that Fallout vibe, isn't it? It's that thing where, you know, you are scraping around. And so that little thing becomes important. And I think it's difficult because we have had about 3 of the players, because it's a fairly biggish party anyway. So we had kind of room for this to happen, but 3 of the players, their attendance has been difficult, and they haven't been able to come along. And for 2 of the players, at the very least, I was getting the impression from and of, by the kind of lack of attendance and the kind of the vibe that went with it, that they weren't really into it. And it's a funny thing, because I don't know how much of that to call like my failing, whether to take that personally, because I think the campaign's going okay. I think it's all good. I'm really liking the evocative nature of it. You can probably see that I'm very enthusiastic about Mutant and all those little travelogue bits. and I think like the majority of the players are, I believe. Not that you get like a lot of feedback off of players usually on these things anyway. They don't want to like boost your ego too much. So I don't want it to like become like too much of an ego thing where it's like, what, you've insulted my masterpiece. I didn't even design the game, you know. I think I'm pretty much doing it how Free League would want it done, but actually in an accelerated manner that you're less likely to get bored in, because I'm not going to let too much repeat, as I've said. So I'm doing the best I can. Maybe the setting isn't for the player. Maybe it's that. But here's the thing that got me thinking. Because it's a setting that's so full of those little things, and then finally you get like a bigger event. You get to the big place. But then you get out of the big place, you run for your lives, and it's all like a big deal. And you go back to the little things again, and life back until something really big happens again. There's those little finds, the scraping around. And some of those players, they didn't get to experience the game from the beginning, and or like from the second session necessarily, or maybe from the third. I don't know, maybe a bit, or like maybe a bit of the third, and then had to leave early or turn up late or something like that, and then maybe come in on the sixth for an hour, or and that sort of thing. And I think that sort of broken appearance. I think it's difficult to just turn around and say, I'm not enjoying it. I mean, obviously you're allowed to say that. Of course you are. I think it's difficult to just leave it at that without some sort of asterisk there. Like, but this player attended only this much percentage out of the whole, just so that you are all aware of that. Maybe that's got a bearing on it, I don't know. But the way I guess I think of it is like this story of small things. It's like you tuning into a Netflix series, and you come in halfway through episode 3 of something. You're not going to know what's going on. You're going to have no like narrative thread whatsoever to come off of, and none of the journey behind you is going to mean anything. All those little things, and if you try to explain those little things to somebody, we met a maniac reptile who wanted to actually eat people, and it was really, really epic. He tried to capture us, and it was very spooky and all that. None of that actually gives you the evocative narrative elements. So you could just try to say that, but you can't appreciate, for instance, what was actually going on, what the struggle was, how bad it was for the players, how potentially supernaturally frightening this thing actually was, and in what way. And it was really, really creepy. That's something I could actually release. That would be interesting. That's something I came up with, for example. And yeah, those little things, you can't really explain them with words. You have to experience them, and it's tricky. It's tricky because it's not something I can necessarily improve on, because you if you've missed kind of the thread, then you've never been able to pick up the thread, and it would just sound like a bunch of rubbishy kind of little random things, and you turn up and you watch them for a while scrabbling around and go like, oh my god, I found a can of Coke, and you could say, oh, wow, this is boring, guys, wow. But the struggle to have got there, and the way it was done between the players as well, it tells a story in a very particular way. So anyway, that's Mutant's way of doing it. Telling the journey, telling the travel, concentrating on the smaller things, and then when the bigger things happen, well, they're kind of an exception. But and I suppose it would be the same if you were playing Mutant. It's all mostly travel based, exploration based. Hey, there's a building there. Why don't we search that out? Hey, there's a house out in the middle of nowhere. We'll just check that out. And it's not a dungeon. There's not a wizard's tower. It's a house out in the middle of nowhere. There's that Fallout thing, isn't it? There's that thing like in those RPGs, the computer game ones. Yeah, you eventually pick up fast travel and that. And then once you've actually got the fast travel and you start utilizing it, it kind of spoils the atmosphere of the game a little bit in some ways. I know it's, it gets it done quicker and you're probably going to do it. But that you had to travel manually between all those places at least once the first time, and that's the accelerated campaign of using the fast travel, obviously, right there. But I think of games like back to Elder Scrolls Morrowind, Elder Scrolls 3. And I played that at the time on the PC. At the time, I was fortunate enough to experience it, and my God, wasn't that just that had all feel? It got me in the feels, and it still does. It didn't have the fast travel. I don't think it did. And that idea that you really had to turn this corner, and make your way through the forest. And if you want to go back, you're gonna have to make your way back and travel all the time and explore. And new things might keep cropping up. These emergent gameplay events. Because this is now walking on the road at this time, and then they meet some other part, and these other NPCs kind of react to each other and may attack or they may help each other, and you then react to them differently, or something else randomly happens while they're both there at the same time, and boop. Red Dead Redemption 2, same deal again, open world, but with random elements all floating about effectively. It's a random encounter table, emergent gameplay as well from that, and then reactive gameplay from player interactions, all sorts of things like that happening. And for me, that's really big on where the quality is that you don't get from the fast travel necessarily. So you imagine something like that, but you're experiencing all of that as the travel. And for me, like a game like Fallout, it is all about the exploration. It is all about, oh wow, that's a sewer grate. That's a sewer entrance. Wow, I can go in there. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. What's gonna be in here? What am I gonna find? What's gonna be the loot? But what's the layout like? It's the unknown. But it's those small things. The world that was. Finding out more about it. I suppose, it's going to do it for some players. And obviously it's not going to do it for others. But I don't think in this case it was necessarily given enough chance because the narrative thread wasn't there. But that's what Mutant works like. And that's what it can be at its best. A travel-centric vibe of exploration of what the world was. And there we go. Until next time, I will see you at what is left of the post-apocalyptic table.